Good evening, everyone. Breaking news today as Ukraine announces its decision to boycott Olympic qualifying events in which Russians are competing for the Paris 2024 Games. This is a significant move, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out in the coming months.
Yes, Barra. It's definitely a big story. I think it's important to note that this decision comes after the International Olympic Committee outlined new guidelines that would allow Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete as neutrals.
Well, Katie, it seems like the F is trying to walk a fine line here. On the one hand, they want to allow athletes from these countries to compete. But on the other hand, they don't want to appear to be condemning their actions.
That's a good point, Albert. It's a delicate situation, to be sure. But I think it's important to remember that the athletes themselves are not responsible for the actions of their governments.
Yeah, and let's not forget that the Olympics are supposed to be about bringing people together, not tearing them apart. It's a shame that politics has to get in the way of that.
I agree, KD. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that these are complex issues. There are no easy answers when it comes to geopolitics.
Well, Elon, I think that's where science can play a role. By studying the underlying causes of conflicts, we can work towards finding solutions that benefit everyone.
Absolutely, Albert. And in the meantime, we can continue to have these important conversations and work towards a more peaceful world.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just glad that we have freedom to have these conversations without fear of retribution. It's something we should never take for granted.
Indeed, Kitty. And I think it's important to remember that we all have a role to play in creating a better world. Whether it's through science, politics, or the arts, we can all make a difference.
Good evening, everyone. Breaking news today as President Biden urges Russia to release American journalist Evan Gershkovich, who was arrested on espionage charges. This is a concerning development, and we must stand up for the freedom of the press and the rights of journalists everywhere.
Absolutely, Barra. It's important to remember that journalism is a cornerstone of democracy, and we cannot allow it to be suppressed or silenced.
I couldn't agree more, Katie. As someone who has spent their life pursuing knowledge and truth, I find it deeply troubling that a journalist could be arrested for simply doing their job. It's almost as if Russia is stuck in a time warp, still living in the Cold War era.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just glad it's not me getting arrested for espionage. I mean, I do have some pretty innovative ideas, but I promise they're not classified.
Let's stay on topic, Alon. This is a serious issue that requires our attention and action. We must ensure that Evan Gershkovich is released and that the rights of journalists are protected around the world.
And it's not just about one journalist. It's about the larger issue of press freedom. We need to send a message that this kind of behavior is unacceptable and will not be tolerated.
Indeed, Katie. The free flow of information is essential for progress and innovation. Without it, we risk stagnation and regression.
Well, I for one am all for progress and innovation. Maybe we should send Gershkovich some of my latest ideas to keep him entertained while he's in jail.
I don't think that's the solution, Alon. We need to focus on diplomatic efforts to secure his release and ensure that this kind of behavior doesn't continue.
Exactly, Barra. We need to work together to protect the rights of journalists and ensure that the truth can be told without fear of persecution or retaliation. It's the only way we can move forward as a society.
Good evening, everyone. Breaking news today is NATO has officially banned the social media app TikTok on their devices due to security concerns. This is a significant move, and we need to discuss it further.
Yes, Barra. This is a big deal. TikTok has been a popular app for a while now, and many people use it for entertainment and socializing. But with the security concerns, it's understandable why NATO would take this step.
Well, I must say, I'm not surprised. As a physicist, I know the importance of data security, and we must take every precaution to protect our information.
I agree with Albert. As a tech entrepreneur, I know the risks involved with data breaches. We need to be vigilant and take every measure to ensure our data is secure.
It's interesting to note that NATO is not the only governmental body to ban TikTok. The US, Norway, European Parliament, and other nations have already banned the app from government-issued devices.
And it's not just governmental bodies. Many companies and organizations have also banned TikTok due to security concerns.
It's important to note that the concerns stem from the Chinese parent company, ByteDance. There are concerns that the Chinese government could have access to TikTok users' data through ByteDance.
The TikTok CEO, Chu has stressed that the company is completely independent from Beijing and is moving its data into the US to be stored on its soil by the American company Oracle.
Still, Western governments remain skeptical. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told Congress earlier this month that TikTok should be ended one way or another.
It will be interesting to see how this plays out. Will other countries follow NATO's lead and ban TikTok? Or will TikTok be able to prove that their data is secure and regain the trust of governments and organizations?
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's breaking news. We have just received word that Russia has adopted a new anti-West foreign policy strategy. In this article from Duke, we learn that President Putin has signed new guidelines aimed at curbing Western dominance and identifying China and India as key partners for the future.
That's right, Barak. The 42nd page document, which was published on the Kremlin's website, said that Russia would aim to create the conditions for any state to reject new colonialist and hegemonic aims.
It seems that Russia has become increasingly isolated on the world stage and has sought to boost political and economic ties with countries in Africa and Asia, such as China and India, that have taken a more neutral stance towards its offensive in Ukraine. I guess you could say they're trying to make new friends.
The document designates the United States as the greatest threat facing Russia and describes the US as the main instigator, organizer, and executor of the aggressive anti-Russian policy of the collective West.
This is a significant shift in Russia's foreign policy, as it reflects that the US is the source of the main risks to Russia's security, international peace, and balance, just and sustainable development of mankind.
So I guess we're not friends anymore, Russia. That's okay. We'll just have to make new friends too.
The doctrine also described Russia as a state civilization tasked with defending what it called the Russian world and traditional spiritual and moral values against pseudo-humanistic and other neoliberal ideological attitudes.
I'm not sure what pseudo-humanistic means, but it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
All joking aside, this new foreign policy strategy is a cause for concern. The term unfriendly countries has been used by Russia to refer to those countries, particularly in Europe and North America, that have condemned Russian invasion of Ukraine and adopted sanctions.
It's important to remember that Russia's foreign policy affects not just the US, but the entire world. We'll be keeping a close eye on this story as it develops. That's all for tonight's news. Thank you for tuning in.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's breaking news. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has just announced that the West is an existential threat to Russia. This is a significant development in the ongoing tensions between Russia and the West.
Yes, Barak. This is a major story. It's important to note that Lavrov specifically named the United States as the main instigator of anti-Russian sentiment.
Well, Katie, I suppose that's not surprising. After all, the United States has been a major player on the global stage for decades. But it's interesting to see Russia officially recognize the West as an existential threat.
Absolutely, Albert. And it's not just the United States that Russia sees as a threat. Lavrov also mentioned that the West has been trying to undermine Moscow's military, economic, and technological potential.
Yes, and it's worth noting that this announcement comes just a few weeks after Chinese leader Xi Jinping visited Moscow and stressed the deepened ties between China and Russia. It seems that Putin is looking to strengthen his alliances in the face of perceived threats from the West.
That's a good point, Barak. And it's interesting to see China and India officially designated as Russia's main partners. I wonder how this will affect the balance of power in the region.
Well, Katie, it certainly brings to mind the Cold War era, when the world was divided into two major power blocks. But I think it's important to remember that the world has changed a lot since then.
Absolutely, Albert. And it's not just the geopolitical landscape that's changed. We're also seeing revolutionary changes in technology, with companies like SpaceX pushing the boundaries of what's possible in space exploration.
That's a great point, Alon. And it's worth noting that the West has its own alliances, such as NATO, which are designed to counter perceived threats from Russia. It will be interesting to see how this new policy document affects those relationships.
Yes, Barak. And it's also worth noting that Lavrov specifically mentioned the UN as a forum for discussing these issues. It seems that Russia is looking to engage with the international community on this topic.
Breaking news. Pope Francis has left the hospital after undergoing surgery. In this article from Beck, it says that he is expected to be present in St. Peter's Square on Sunday for the Eucharistic celebration, Palm Sunday, the Passion of the Lord.
Well, I'm glad Pope is still alive. We wouldn't want to lose him just yet.
It's amazing how far medical technology has come. I wonder what advancements we'll see in the future.
Maybe we'll have robot doctors in the future. That way, we won't have to worry about human error.
Speaking of advancements, Did you guys hear about the new electric car that's coming out?
Oh, you mean the one that Elon's company is making? I heard it's going to be out of this world.
Well, I'm more interested in the science behind it. How does it work?
It's all about the batteries, Albert. We're making some major breakthroughs in that area.
That's great to hear. We need to start moving towards more sustainable energy sources.
Yeah. We don't want to end up like those poor people in Texas who lost power during the winter storm.